It started with a message, then another. For 6 months, Elena Petrova, a translator living in Sofia, exchanged long, late-night conversations with Mark Dawson, a contractor from Waco, Texas. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of confidence she'd always longed for. He told her about wide-open spaces, sweet tea, and how he wanted to build a life with a woman who believes in forever. To Elena, forever sounded like freedom. She had grown up in the same gray apartment block her entire life, her dreams caged by bills, and a city that never forgave ambition. So when Mark sent her a plane ticket, it felt like fate. On the day she landed in Texas, the air was thick with summer heat. Mark was waiting at the arrival's gate, holding sunflowers and wearing that same disarming smile from his photos. In that moment, Elena believed she'd stepped into the start of her new life, not knowing she'd already walked into her final chapter. The drive from the airport stretched endlessly. Miles of farmland rolled past as Mark talked about his family, his job, his dreams. Elena listened, her accent soft against his slow drawl. He called her darling and told her she looked even better than her pictures. For a while she believed him. The air smelled like dust and wildflower. When they reached his home, a lone, 2-story farmhouse surrounded by silence, Elena tried to tell herself it was romantic. But as she stepped out of the truck, she noticed the locks on the windows. Too many of them. Inside, the house smelled faintly of gasoline and old wood. A mounted deer head stared from the wall. Mark moved quickly, showing her the kitchen, the bedroom, the backyard. Everything was neat, but strangely impersonal. "You'll get used to it," he said, brushing her shoulder. That night, as they unpacked, he handed her a prepaid phone. "So you don't rack up charges," he said with a grin. She smiled back, but something in her chest tightened. Days passed. Mark worked long hours, leaving Elena alone. She cooked, cleaned, and tried to learn the rhythm of small-town Texas. But the silence was heavy. When she spoke with her sister Anna over video call, her smile looked practiced. "He's nice," she said. "Just different." Anna noticed the pause, but Elena quickly changed the subject. One evening, Elena stepped outside to watch the sunset. The fields glowed gold and endless, stretching past the horizon. For a brief moment, she imagined she could love this place. Then Mark's voice called from inside, sharp, impatient. "Elena, dinner's getting cold." She turned back toward the house, her face softening into obedience. The dream still lived in her heart, but the cracks had already begun to form. The first week passed in a blur of dinners, chores, and phone calls. Elena wasn't allowed to make without Mark nearby. He told her he just wanted to keep her safe, that people in America aren't always kind to foreigners. At first, she believed it, but each rule came faster than the last. No Facebook, no talking to neighbors, no leaving the house without him. When she tried to protest, Mark's voice hardened into something she'd never heard before. That night, Elena wrote an unsent email to her sister. "I think I made a mistake. She never finished it." Mark began checking her phone. He'd scroll through her messages asking who each contact was, why she still spoke to her sister so much. When she told him it made her feel trapped, he laughed. "Trapped? You've got everything you ever wanted, sweetheart." Elena forced a smile, but inside she felt her world closing in. Not with bars and locks, but with control that felt invisible and suffocating. He started appearing at her side unexpectedly. Every time she opened a curtain, every time she stepped outside, his presence filled every space, every silence. The neighbors rarely came by, and the road was too long to walk. One afternoon, when she asked about getting her own car, Mark smiled without looking up from his newspaper. "No need. Everything you need is right here." That night, Elena dreamed of home for the first time since she'd arrived. and woke up crying. On the 12th day, Elena found a small box in Mark's desk. Photos of other women. Smiling, posing, holding hands with him in the same places he'd taken her. When she confronted him, he laughed it off. "You jealous baby." That's all in the past. But that night, he didn't come to bed. The next morning, her phone was gone. By the third week, Elena had stopped smiling. Her laughter felt rehearsed. She wrote her sister only once more, using Mark's laptop when he was gone. A message full of excuses, but between the lines, a quiet plea for help. "I'm okay," she wrote, "just adjusting." But Anna read the message twice, her stomach twisting. It didn't sound like Elena at all. The morning she planned to leave, Elena packed quietly. She folded her passport and a few photos into her bag, waiting for Mark to go to work. She'd found a bus route online that could take her to Austin. From there, she could call her sister, maybe even the embassy. But when Mark kissed her goodbye that morning, she felt his gaze linger too long, as if he already knew. By noon, the front door was locked from the outside. That afternoon, she slipped out through the back door. The wind was dry and hot, the cornfields whispering around her. She walked fast, clutching her bag, checking the road for a passing car. But before she reached the fence line, a sound stopped her. The crunch of tires on gravel. Mark's truck. Neighbors heard shouting that evening, a woman's voice, then a man's. One described it as like thunder before a storm. No one called the police. It was just another argument out on County Road 14. By the next morning, the curtains were drawn and no one saw Elena again. Anna stopped receiving messages. First 1 day, then 3, then 7. The last text from Elena had simply read, "I'm okay. Don't worry." But something in the words felt hollow. Anna called, emailed, even messaged Mark. He said Elena had left, that she couldn't handle country life. His tone was calm. Too calm. That's when Anna called the police. 10 days later, a jogger cutting through a cornfield outside Waco stopped short. Something pale in the dirt, a hand motionless beneath the sun. When police arrived, they found Elena's body face down among the stalks, her suitcase half buried nearby. The American dream she'd come chasing had ended where the corn met the sky, silent and unforgiving. Detective Carla Ruiz had seen too many bodies in her 20 years on the force, but something about this one lingered. The cornfield was silent except for the wind, and the sight of Elena's small frame beneath the sun made her stomach twist. She knelt beside the remains, her hand brushing the edge of a buried photograph. A picture of Elena and Mark, smiling. The moment she saw it, Ruiz knew. This wasn't a random act. This was personal. Back at the sheriff's office, Ruiz spread the evidence across her desk. Elena's passport, phone records, a necklace found in the field. Mark's story was full of gaps. He claimed she left on her own, but never reported her missing. When Ruiz questioned him, he spoke smoothly, as if rehearsed. "People leave," he said. Maybe she got homesick. But Ruiz had seen the bruises in the photos. Homesickness didn't do that. No. Or should be. Shouldn't. Sickness didn't do that. Ruiz drove to the farmhouse. The place felt heavy, untouched since the night Elena vanished. Dust clung to every surface. In the garage, the faint smell of oil and bleach mixed in the air. She followed it to a tarp tucked behind the truck. Beneath it, rope fibers and a woman's earring. The evidence wasn't just speaking. It was screaming. When forensics came back, everything connected. The fibers on the tarp matched the rope found near Elena's body. Soil samples from Mark's truck tires were identical to those from the field. The lab techs even found traces of Elena's perfume inside the bed of his truck. For Ruiz, it was enough. She signed the warrant with a steady hand. Mark Dawson was going to jail. When they arrived at Mark's house, he was calm, too calm. He opened the door, smiled, and said, "I figured you'd come sooner or later." Ruiz read him his rights as he stood in the doorway, still wearing the same flannel shirt from the photo found with Elena's body. As they led him away, the sun broke through the clouds, lighting the fields behind him. It felt almost poetic. The Texas sky watching justice begin to unfold. In the interrogation room, Mark sat perfectly still. His hands rested flat on the metal table, his eyes calm, almost smug. Detective Ruiz had seen that look before. Men who believed they could outtalk justice. She pressed record, her voice steady. "Tell me what happened that night." Mark smirked. She left. Just like the others. The way he said others made Ruiz's pulse quicken. For hours, Mark talked around the truth. About his hard childhood. About women who never appreciated what he gave. Ruiz listened, patient, her silence doing the work. When she finally slid the photo of Elena across the table, the one from the cornfield, the mask cracked. His breathing shifted. His hands trembled just once. "You think you know what happened?" he said quietly. "You don't." When the confession came, it wasn't shouted. It came in fragments, sentences that fell apart halfway through. He'd followed her when she tried to leave. They argued in the field. She called him a liar, a coward. He said he just wanted her to listen. By the time Ruiz asked how long, his eyes were glassy. "She hit her head," he whispered. "I didn't mean to." But the way his voice broke told her everything. He'd meant enough. Ruiz replayed his words later in her office. His confession wasn't just about Elena. It was about every woman before her. She dug deeper and found 2 other missing persons reports filed years apart in neighboring counties. The same story. The same man. The same promise of a new beginning. Elena hadn't been his first dream, she was his last. When the tape ended, Ruiz walked into the hallway. Reporters had already gathered, their flashes lighting the precinct windows. She thought of Elena's sister, of the letter that would soon cross an ocean carrying the words, "We found him." Justice never brought peace. Not really, but it brought closure. And sometimes, that had to be enough. The trial began 8 months later in McLennan County Court. The headlines called it the Cornfield Murder. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, chasing sound bites from people who never knew her. Inside, Mark sat behind the defense table in a navy suit, his expression eerily calm. Across the aisle, Elena's sister Anna clutched a photo of her smiling sibling. The courtroom smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the scent of bureaucracy meeting heartbreak. When Ruiz took the stand, she kept her voice steady. She walked the jury through every photo, every thread of evidence. The rope fibers, the phone records, the soil samples. Mark stared at her the whole time, unblinking. In those moments, Ruiz wasn't speaking just for Elena. She was speaking for every woman who never made it home. When the verdict came, the room was silent. Guilty. Second-degree murder. Anna wept quietly. Ruiz exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Mark didn't flinch. He simply looked straight ahead, his face drained of everything that once made him seem human. The judge's gavel echoed through the room like thunder in an empty field. After the sentencing, Ruiz met Anna outside the courthouse. They didn't speak at first. They just stood beneath the Texas sun, the sound of cicadas thick in the air. Finally, Anna said softly, "My sister believed in love." Ruiz nodded. He made her believe. "But you made sure the world remembered her truth. Sometimes justice doesn't feel like victory, only survival." That night, Ruiz drove out to the cornfield. The stalks were gone now, the soil freshly turned, the air quiet. She parked her car, stepped out, and placed a single sunflower where Elena's body was found. In the darkness, the wind moved softly through the open field. For the first time, Ruiz didn't hear echoes, only peace. Months after the trial, Elena's story made national news. Networks replayed her smiling photo beside words like love, betrayal, and the American dream. Commentators debated how a woman could travel halfway across the world and vanish in 30 days. But for Anna, it wasn't a story. It was a scar that would never fade. She kept her sister's belongings in a small wooden box, a passport, a letter, and the sunflower Detective Ruiz had sent from Texas. In Texas, Detective Ruiz was invited to speak at a local women's shelter. She told them about Elena. Not about the crime, but about her kindness, her hope, her courage. When she finished, a young woman in the crowd raised her hand and whispered, "I think I'm with someone like him." That's when Ruiz realized. Maybe this was how justice continued, one story saving another. A year later, Anna returned to Texas. She visited the cornfield, now empty and quiet, wildflowers growing where the evidence markers once stood. She knelt and whispered something in Bulgarian. A prayer, a promise. Above her, the sky was vast and blue, and for the first time the land didn't feel cruel. It felt like it had finally let her sister go. Elena's name began appearing in advocacy programs across Eastern Europe, seminars on online safety, domestic abuse prevention, and immigration awareness. Her face became a symbol, not of tragedy, but of warning and resilience. What began as one woman's dream became a movement, changing how others sought their own. Some stories end with darkness. Others light a candle that keeps burning long after. Elena came to America. Below it took her life, it also gave meaning to countless others. Detective Ruiz still keeps her case file on the shelf marked Petrova E., not as evidence, but as remembrance.